A fateful encounter. The forest was alive with strange sounds. Ethan stumbled through the dense underbrush, every step feeling heavier as exhaustion pulled at his limbs. His shuttle had crash-landed on this uncharted alien planet just hours ago, leaving him stranded in a wilderness that seemed both beautiful and deadly. The trees around him towered like silent giants, their glowing leaves casting faint blue light in the dim twilight. Despite their beauty, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He pressed a hand to his side, where a jagged piece of metal from the crash had torn through his suit. Blood seeped through his makeshift bandage, but he forced himself to keep moving. Stopping wasn't an option, not when the strange howls he'd heard earlier seemed to be getting closer. As he climbed over a fallen tree, his foot slipped on the moss, and he fell hard to the ground. Groaning, he turned his head and froze. Just a few feet away, a pair of violet eyes were watching him from the shadows. For a moment, neither he nor the figure moved. Then, slowly, the figure stepped forward. It was a woman. At least, she looked like one. Her shimmering skin reflected the faint light of the glowing trees, and her tall, lithe form moved with a grace that made her seem almost otherworldly. Her long silver hair flowed behind her, and the intricate patterns on her robe marked her as someone important. But it was her eyes, sharp, calculating, and curious, that held Ethan's gaze. "You're human," she said, her voice smooth yet carrying a note of caution. Her accent was unfamiliar, but her words were clear. Ethan struggled to sit up, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I mean no harm," he said, his voice hoarse. "My ship crashed. I'm just trying to survive." The woman's gaze flicked to his injured side. For a brief moment, something like concern crossed her face, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "It's forbidden for humans to step foot on this land." Ethan managed a weak smile. "Trust me, I didn't plan this." She seemed to hesitate, as if weighing her options. Then, with a sigh, she stepped closer and knelt beside him. "If the patrols find you, they'll kill you on sight," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "But if I leave you here, you'll die anyway." Ethan flinched as she reached for his wound, but her touch was surprisingly gentle. She tore a strip of fabric from her robe and began to wrap it around his side, her hands working quickly. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Her eyes flicked to his, and for the first time, he saw a spark of defiance. "Because you don't deserve to die for an accident," she said, "but don't mistake this for kindness. If anyone finds out I helped you, it will cost me everything." As she finished tying the bandage, a distant howl echoed through the forest. Ethan stiffened, his eyes darting to the shadows. The woman stood abruptly, pulling him to his feet with surprising strength. "We need to move," she said. "Now." Ethan didn't argue. Leaning on her for support, he followed as she led him deeper into the forest. Her movements were swift and sure, as if she knew every inch of this land. Despite his pain and fear, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at her. Who was she? And why would someone like her, a person clearly bound by rules and status, risk everything for a stranger? After what felt like hours, they reached a secluded clearing. A small hidden shelter stood nestled among the trees, its entrance almost invisible beneath a curtain of vines. The woman helped Ethan inside and set him down on a makeshift bed of soft leaves. "Stay here," she commanded. "Don't make a sound." "Wait," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't catch your name." She hesitated at the doorway, her back to him. "It's Amara," she said finally. "And if anyone asks, you've never met me." Before Ethan could respond, she slipped out into the night, leaving him alone in the strange, alien shelter. Exhaustion finally overtook him, and he sank back against the bed. As he drifted into unconsciousness, one thought lingered in his mind. What had he gotten himself into? Forbidden friendship. Ethan woke to the soft hum of alien insects and the gentle glow of the strange, bioluminescent plants outside the shelter. His side throbbed, but the makeshift bandage Amara had tied around him held firm. He sat up slowly, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. As his eyes adjusted, he realized the alien woman, Amara, had returned. She was crouched near the entrance, her back to him, examining a small device that emitted faint, flickering lights. "You're awake," she said without turning around. Her tone was neutral, but there was a trace of relief in her voice. Ethan nodded, though she couldn't see him. "I guess I owe you my life," he said. Again. Amara turned, her violet eyes sharp as she regarded him. "Don't thank me," she said. "I shouldn't have helped you. If anyone finds out, the punishment will be severe." Ethan leaned back against the wall, studying her. "Then why did you do it?" For a moment, Amara didn't answer. She seemed to weigh her words carefully, as though admitting her motives might make her vulnerable. Finally, she said, "Because you're not like the others." Ethan frowned. "The others? The humans who came before you," she explained, her voice tinged with bitterness. "They came to our world centuries ago, promising peace. Instead, they'd brought war. My people barely survived. That's why humans are forbidden here." Ethan's chest tightened. He'd read about the early expeditions to alien worlds, stories of greed and colonization that left scars on countless civilizations. "I didn't know," he said quietly. Amara's gaze softened slightly, but her expression remained guarded. "You don't seem like a soldier," she said, almost as if testing him. "I'm not," Ethan replied. "I'm a diplomat. I was on my way to a negotiation summit when my shuttle was hit by an asteroid. I didn't mean to crash here." Amara tilted her head, her curiosity evident. "A diplomat? So you're trained to talk your way out of trouble?" Ethan chuckled weakly. "Something like that." For the first time, Amara smiled, a small, fleeting expression that softened her features. "You'll need more than words to survive here," she said. "This world isn't kind to outsiders." As the tension eased, Amara began to inspect Ethan's wound again. Her touch was efficient but gentle, and Ethan found himself watching her closely. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, both alien and familiar, with a strength that seemed unshakable. "Your people, they really hate humans, don't they?" Ethan asked. Amara's hands stilled, and for a moment she didn't answer. Then she said, "Hate isn't the right word. It's fear. We've seen what your kind can do. My people are proud, but they've grown wary. They think keeping humans away is the only way to stay safe. And you." Ethan pressed. "What do you think?" Amara met his gaze, her eyes filled with a quiet defiance. "I think the old ways don't work anymore," she said. "The world is changing, whether we like it or not. Clinging to fear and isolation will only make us weaker." Ethan nodded, impressed by her conviction. "You sound like a leader." Amara's expression darkened. "I'm not a leader," she said. "Not yet, anyway. And if I'm caught helping you, I never will be." Before Ethan could respond, a low growl echoed through the forest, sending a chill down his spine. Amara rose swiftly, her hand reaching for a blade hidden beneath her robe. "Stay here," she commanded, her voice sharp. Ethan started to protest, but she shot him a glare that silenced him. "I mean it," she said. "If you value your life, don't make a sound." Amara slipped out of the shelter, her movements silent and precise. Ethan listened as the growl grew louder, followed by the sound of something massive moving through the trees. His heart raced, but he forced himself to stay put. Minutes passed like hours, each one stretching his nerves to the breaking point. Finally, the sounds faded, and Amara returned, her blade glinting faintly with what looked like dark green blood. "It's safe," she said, though her tone suggested it was only temporary. "What was that?" Ethan asked. "A hunter beast," Amara replied, wiping her blade clean. "They're common in this region, but that one was too close. We'll need to move soon." Ethan frowned. "Move where?" "This is your world, not mine. I don't even know where we are." Amara hesitated, as though grappling with a decision. Then she said, "There's a sanctuary, a place where even the patrols won't look. It's far, but it's your best chance at survival." "And what about you?" Ethan asked. Amara's expression hardened. "I'm already breaking the rules by helping you. If anyone finds out, I'll lose everything, my position, my family's honor, maybe even my life." Ethan's stomach twisted with guilt. "I never wanted to put you in danger." "I know," Amara said softly. "But it's too late for regrets. We've started this, and we'll finish it together." As the first rays of dawn pierced the alien forest, Ethan felt a strange sense of determination. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear. He wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore. Amara had risked everything to help him, and he wouldn't let that sacrifice be in vain. The people's wrath. The air in the Grand Council chamber was thick with tension. Amara stood tall in the center of the room, her shimmering skin reflecting the dim blue light that filtered through the crystalline windows. Around her, the council members, dressed in ceremonial robes adorned with intricate patterns, stared down with a mixture of suspicion and disdain. "How do you explain your absence, Amara?" one of the elders demanded. His voice was cold, echoing off the polished stone walls. "You disappeared for an entire night. There are rumors you've been seen in the outer forests." Amara's heart raced, but she kept her expression calm. "I went to meditate," she said evenly. "The forest helps me clear my mind." The elder narrowed his eyes. "And yet, reports say you were seen near the old sanctuary, a forbidden place. What were you doing there?" Amara clenched her fists at her sides, her mind racing for an answer. She had hidden Ethan well before returning to the capital, but the patrols were relentless. It was only a matter of time before they discovered something, or someone, they weren't supposed to find. "I needed solitude," she said finally. "The weight of our traditions and expectations is heavy. I sought clarity." The council murmured among themselves, their voices a mix of agreement and skepticism. The elder who had spoken leaned forward. "Clarity is one thing. Defiance is another. You tread dangerously close to the latter, Amara." She bowed her head, though her jaw tightened in defiance. "I understand, elder." But she didn't understand. Not entirely. Her people's hatred for humans ran deeper than she had realized. It wasn't just about fear. It was about pride, about holding on to the identity that had kept them united for centuries. Admitting that humans might not be the monsters they believed would mean unraveling the very fabric of their society. Amara's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of heavy boots against the chamber floor. She turned to see a squad of guards entering, their faces grim. The captain of the guard stepped forward and saluted the council. "We found signs of intrusion in the outer forest," he announced. "Tracks leading to the sanctuary." The murmurs grew louder, and the elder's gaze sharpened. "And did you find anything? Or anyone?" The captain hesitated, then shook his head. "No, elder. But the tracks are fresh. Someone has been there recently." Amara's breath caught, but she forced herself to remain composed. She knew Ethan's tracks would lead back to the sanctuary. It was only a matter of time before the guards searched it thoroughly. She needed to act, and fast. The council deliberated, their voices a cacophony of anger and suspicion. Amara listened with half an ear, her mind already working on a plan. She couldn't let them find Ethan. Not only would it mean his death, but it would also confirm their worst fears about her. As the session ended, Amara bowed to the council and left the chamber, her heart pounding. The moment she stepped into the open air, she was greeted by her closest confidant, Tarek. His golden skin glimmered in the sunlight, and his expression was a mix of concern and frustration. "What's going on, Amara?" he demanded. "The patrols are in an uproar. The council is suspicious, and you're acting strange." Amara hesitated. She trusted Tarek, but she knew the risk of telling him the truth. "I made a mistake," she said finally. "I went to the forest and was seen. Now the council thinks I'm hiding something." Tarek frowned. Are you? She met his gaze, her voice steady. No, but they'll use any excuse to discredit me. Tarek studied her for a moment, then sighed. Be careful, Amara. The council isn't just suspicious, they're afraid. If they think you're a threat to their power, they won't hesitate to act. I know, Amara said softly. But I can't let fear control me. Not anymore. Later that night, under the cover of darkness, Amara slipped away from the capital and made her way back to the sanctuary. The forest was eerily quiet, the usual hum of life replaced by an unsettling stillness. When she reached the hidden shelter, she found Ethan pacing, his expression tense. They're searching for me, he said the moment he saw her. I heard voices, guards. They're close. Amara nodded, her mind racing. We need to leave, she said. The sanctuary isn't safe anymore. Where will we go? Ethan asked, his voice filled with worry. There's an ancient artifact hidden in the Forbidden Zone, Amara said. It's a symbol of unity, a relic from the time before the war with your kind. If we can reach it, it might prove to the council that peace is possible. Ethan frowned. That sounds risky. It is, Amara admitted, but it's the only way. If we don't do this, they'll find you, and they'll destroy any hope of change. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. All right, he said. Let's do it. As they prepared to leave, Amara couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but she wasn't alone. Together, they might just have a chance to change everything. A dangerous pact. The Forbidden Zone stretched before them like a graveyard of forgotten history. Jagged cliffs loomed overhead, their edges sharp against the crimson sky. Ethan and Amara stood at the edge of the desolate expanse, the dense forest behind them fading into shadow. This was no ordinary place. It radiated an ancient energy that made the air hum, and the ground beneath their feet feel alive. Amara glanced at Ethan, her expression grave. The artifact lies deep within, she said. No one has dared to enter this zone for centuries. The patrols won't follow us here. Ethan frowned, looking at the cracked earth and the strange, glowing symbols etched into the rocks. Why not? What's so dangerous about this place? Amara hesitated, her violet eyes scanning the horizon. Legends say it's cursed. The artifact was sealed away after the war with your kind. My people believe entering this place anchors the spirits of the fallen. Spirits? Ethan raised an eyebrow, his voice tinged with skepticism. You don't strike me as someone who believes in ghosts. I don't, Amara said firmly. But curses often have real dangers behind them. This land is unstable, and the energy here, it's unpredictable. If we're not careful, it could kill us. Ethan swallowed hard, but he nodded. Let's get this over with. The two ventured into the Forbidden Zone, their movements cautious. The air grew colder with each step, and the eerie silence pressed down on them. The terrain was treacherous, with crumbling ledges and pools of glowing liquid that hissed ominously. Ethan's breath fogged in the chill, and he couldn't help but glance over his shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. As they climbed over a ridge, Amara stopped suddenly, holding up a hand. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. What is it? He whispered. She pointed to a cluster of jagged stones ahead. They seemed ordinary at first glance, but as Ethan looked closer, he saw faint ripples in the air around them, like heat waves on a summer road. Energy traps, Amara said quietly. Leftovers from the old wars. They're dormant now, but if we disturb them... Ethan nodded, his throat dry. Got it. Don't touch the scary rocks. Amara gave him a faint smile before leading the way around the traps, her movements deliberate and precise. Ethan followed closely, his eyes darting between the ground and the strange symbols carved into the stones. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Hours passed as they made their way deeper into the zone. The landscape grew stranger, with twisted trees and glowing vines that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly rhythm. Ethan's legs ached, and his side throbbed from his injury, but he pushed on, driven by Amara's determination. Finally, they'd reached a massive chasm. On the other side stood a towering structure, its surface smooth and reflective like black glass. The artifact was unmistakable, a large, obelisk-like object that seemed to hum with its own energy. Surrounding it were remnants of ancient machinery, half buried in the ground and covered in moss. "There it is," Amara said, her voice filled with awe. "The Nexus. It's said to hold the memories of our ancestors and yours, a record of the time before the war." Ethan stared at the artifact, a mix of wonder and apprehension washing over him. "And you think this will convince your people to trust humans?" Amara nodded. "If the Nexus reacts to you, it will prove that unity between our species is possible. But we have to reach it first." The only way across the chasm was a narrow, crumbling bridge of stone. Ethan's stomach turned as he peered over the edge, the bottom of the chasm lost in darkness. "That doesn't look stable." "It's not," Amara admitted, "but it's the only way." They stepped onto the bridge, moving slowly. Every step sent small chunks of stone tumbling into the abyss, the sound echoing eerily. Halfway across, a sudden rumble shook the ground beneath them. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat as he grabbed onto the side of the bridge, struggling to keep his balance. "What's happening?" he shouted. Amara's eyes widened. "The energy in this place, it's reacting to us. We need to move." They ran the rest of the way, the bridge cracking and crumbling behind them. By the time they reached the other side, the entire structure had collapsed, leaving them stranded. Ethan doubled over, panting, while Amara scanned the area with a wary gaze. "No going back now," Ethan said, trying to catch his breath. Amara didn't respond. Her focus was on the Nexus, which had begun to glow faintly. She approached it slowly, her steps hesitant. "It's waking up," she murmured. As she reached out to touch the surface, the glow intensified, and a pulse of energy rippled through the air. Ethan staggered back, shielding his eyes as the Nexus emitted a low, resonating hum. Images flashed before him. Scenes of alien cities, human explorers, and a great war that had torn the galaxy apart. Amara gasped, her hand still on the Nexus. "It's showing us the truth," she said, her voice trembling. "Everything we've lost, and everything we could gain." But before they could fully process what was happening, a distant shout broke the moment. Ethan turned to see figures emerging from the shadows. Guards, their weapons drawn, and their faces twisted with anger. "They found us," Amara said, her voice tight with fear. "We have to protect the Nexus. If they destroy it, all hope of peace will be lost." Ethan nodded, gripping the small survival knife he'd carried since the crash. "Then let's give them a reason to fear us." As the guards closed in, the Nexus pulsed again, its energy swirling around Ethan and Amara like a protective shield. For the first time since this journey began, Ethan felt something he hadn't in days: hope, betrayal, and capture. The hum of the Nexus echoed in the air, a low, rhythmic pulse that seemed to grow stronger as the guards closed in. Amara stood beside Ethan, her posture rigid, her violet eyes scanning the advancing patrol. Their weapons glinted in the faint light of the glowing artifact, and their faces were masks of grim determination. "Amara, chill," the captain of the guard barked, his voice cutting through the tension. "Step away from the human. Surrender now, and we may grant you mercy." Ethan tightened his grip on the small blade in his hand, but he knew it was no match against the alien soldier's advanced weaponry. He glanced at Amara, who stood as still as a statue, her gaze locked on the captain. "I've done nothing wrong," she said firmly. "This human means no harm to our people. He's here by accident, nothing more." The captain sneered. "You've violated the highest law of our kind by aiding him. Your defiance won't go unpunished." Amara's lips tightened, but she didn't back down. "If you truly believe in our laws, then listen to the Nexus," she said, gesturing toward the artifact. "It's alive. It's reacting to us. It's proof that our species are meant to work together. The soldiers hesitated, their eyes darting to the glowing obelisk. The nexus pulsed again, brighter this time, as if responding to Amara's words. For a fleeting moment, Ethan thought the display might sway them. But the captain's expression hardened. "Your treason has blinded you," he growled. "Destroy the nexus." The command sent a shockwave through Ethan. "No," he shouted, stepping in front of the artifact. "You don't understand. This isn't just some relic. It's the key to peace between your people and mine." The guards raised their weapons, and Ethan braced himself, but before they could fire, Amara moved like lightning. She drew her blade and disarmed the closest guard in a single fluid motion. The others surged forward, but she met them head-on, her movements a blur of precision and power. Ethan watched in awe as she fought, her every strike a testament to her skill and resolve. But the guards outnumbered her, and even Amara's agility couldn't keep them at bay forever. One by one, they overwhelmed her, pinning her to the ground. "Stop!" Ethan yelled, rushing forward. He didn't get far before a soldier struck him in the stomach, sending him sprawling. Pain exploded in his ribs, but he forced himself to look up. The captain loomed over Amara, his weapon aimed at her chest. "You've disgraced your people," he said coldly, "and now you'll face the consequences." Amara glared up at him, her voice steady despite her position. "If you destroy the nexus, you'll doom us all. The truth it holds is bigger than you, bigger than any of us." The captain hesitated, his weapon trembling slightly, but then a new voice cut through the chaos. "She's right." Ethan turned, his vision blurry, to see Tarek stepping out of the shadows. The golden-skinned alien looked conflicted, but his voice was steady as he addressed the guards. "Amara's not the enemy here. She's trying to save us from our own ignorance." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Tarek, this is treason. Stand down." Tarek shook his head. "It's not treason to seek the truth. Look at the nexus. It's reacting to them. There's more to this than we understand." The guards exchanged uncertain glances, but the captain's grip on his weapon only tightened. "Enough," he snapped. "Amara and the human will answer for their crimes before the council." Ethan and Amara were hauled to their feet, their hands bound with glowing restraints,